Good afternoon and welcome to a very special interview show of the Prode. Today we are honored to have Joanna Siekiera, fellow at the Prode Center for Innovation and Future Warfare at Marine Corps University, USA, joining us. She is the author of the insightful book 21st Century as the Pacific Century, Culture and Security of Oceania States in Great Power Competition, which our viewers can avail for free. Check out the link in the description. We are excited to explore critical issues surrounding the security of the Indo-Pacific region, the effectiveness of international alliances, and the broader implications of recent geopolitical developments. Joanna will provide valuable insights into these topics, including recent military encounters, the expansion of naval capabilities, and the roles various nations play in maintaining regional stability at the Indo-Pacific. Thank you so much, Dr. Joanna, for your time, and a very warm welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, ladies and gentlemen. This is my honor.
So I would like to, begin the interview by asking that, first of all, what is your assessment of the security situation in Indo-Pacific? Do you think that alliances like the Quad are effective in maintaining peace and stability in such a vast region?
First of all, ladies and gentlemen, I'm an international lawyer, and I like to underline the most important principle in international law being the principle of sovereignty of states. So sovereign states are able to decide how far will they go in international cooperation. Would they formalize the cooperation, like, for example, through international organizations like NATO, European Union, or they would rather stick to informal, so not that much binding cooperation format, as you mentioned, what, for example. It's all up to their benefits, it's all up to their assets, but it doesn't mean that they are less important for those countries. It only means that they don't have such legally binding effects on those countries. And as we all know, 21st century is very tricky. We have all those threats, all those actors which are not anymore state actors only, also non-state actors as terrorist organizations, lone wolves, and so on. Threats to our democracies, they use different methods, not only military, but also cyber, political, economic, legal. So we must bear in mind that to counter the threats to our democracies, we must look through multidimensional perspective, not only one way.
Yeah, so, you mentioned about the actors. So, coming to China. So, do you think China perceives the US engagement in Eastern Europe and the Middle East as an opportunity to pursue its interest in the Indo-Pacific, especially looking at the situation that is going around here in Middle East, in Iran, in Palestine, in, Israel, as well as the Ukraine war? So, do you think so that China will utilize this opportunity to adhere to a strategy which can benefit them in Indo-Pacific, looking at the great powers in the world are busy in their own domains?
Thank you for this question. You being Indian, I don't have to convince you that China is a threat. But this is anyhow the case in Europe. Even yesterday, I am here in a hotel room in Warsaw. My European colleagues, they don't see China as a threat. Western Europeans, they see China as economic partner, while Central Europeans, they a bit hesitate because we understand what is communism. We had communism in our past. We don't want communism. So therefore, it's very important. It's very tricky to see China as civilizational threat. For you, India, China is the direct threat. This is your neighbor. You have a lot of conflicts at the border points, more or less 8 as far as I remember your map. So this is very important that exactly US was absent in Indo-Pacific. They were occupied in Middle East. And of course, now what is happening in Ukraine, in Israel, benefiting China. US is spreading all over. And when we add up this quotation Taiwan, then this is very dangerous because China will only gain because of the US and partners are spread all over.
So, you talked about Taiwan. So, what strategies do you believe that smaller nations in the Indo-Pacific can employ to navigate the great power competition and protect their sovereignty and interests?
First of all, they must underline that what China is doing, it is planned in decades. It's not only for now. And this is our Western error, mistake, that we are only reacting what is happening now. China is planning fully in, and I do this not only as a theoretician, but also practitioner. I've been to Indo-Pacific. I sailed across the Pacific Ocean. So I've seen Chinese vessels, unregulated fishing, spying vessels, using slavery jobs from people, for example, from Vietnam and other Asian countries, Cambodia. This is very important to understand that Chinese, they enter full in, they bribe politicians, they give, for example, infrastructure, they build hospitals, elementary schools, which is essential for Oceania countries being very, very poor. And when I poor, I don't mean underdeveloped. I mean really struggling with basic needs. So China has mastered this aid, humanitarian aid. So we must step in to tell them, look, you will have this Chinese hospital, but through your children or grandchildren, they will live in communist world based on communist values. Very dangerous. And also my mission as educator is to say that. So I am very honored and grateful for you to have me to speak openly about the threats, because maybe those threats are not visible now, today, but they will in the future.
No, it's an absolute. We as well at the Prode have been a very strong supporters of the idea of democracy and the idea of free and fair world. Whereas at the Prode we have been very active in promoting this idea. Whereas taking on nations who are not very aligned to this idea, be it Russia or be it People's Republic of China. So, now coming to the second angle to it, that is the Russian Federation. So, how big of a role does Russian Federation have to play in the Indo-Pacific? And do you think that in any way possible they are aiding China or they are helping China in order to, in order to help China to execute their strategies, basically?
Yes, so I like to say that China and Russia, they are allies, but they are not friends. So we have this cute American term, frenemies. Friends, enemies, frenemies. They not necessarily like each other. They are also competing. Russia is rich in natural resources, which China is missing. But also China has population. And I always look at demography because, ladies and gentlemen, we must keep in mind one China policy. We must keep in mind Chinese forced sterilization of women, forced abortion, and also primacy of male children. So boys, there are villages, towns with males only. And Russia has women. So when we look at this very pure demographic element, Chinese need Russians. So Russia is also another player in Indo-Pacific, plus it's a player in Arctic. That's another thing that naturally, geographically, Russia is Arctic nation. China is not. No, China sees itself as one. And this is always very funny that we're able to convince us, the world, that they are part of the Arctic, which they are not. But again, those two allies are very dangerous because they have slightly different values than we have, and they are not hesitating to strike our values as democracy, protection of human rights, pluralism of democracy, and everything. So freedom of speech, this is very important, that it's not only about freedom of navigation, so shipping and shopping globally, but basic thing as you and I are discussing now in China regime, Russian regime, that would be unacceptable. You and I would go to jail for saying this openly.
Yeah, you mentioned about China as well as Russia. So now coming to the multilateral organizations. So do you think that the recent geopolitical developments, be it in Europe, Middle East, or even in the Indo-Pacific region, has weakened the effectiveness of global organizations like the UNSC or ICC, ICJ in achieving their goals?
It is, and this is what I research on, and I would even say I preach, that China and Russia, they have mastered lawfare. So legal warfare, how they are misusing existing international law framework. Ladies and gentlemen, we live in 21st century, but we still live in this colonial reality of Big Five Security Council where China and Russia are. This is for me unacceptable because, of course, they use veto. Whatever resolution against their interest is held upon. So we should change. Also, you mentioned International Criminal Court, where Russia is not a member. And we, the Western world, we are sabotaging ourselves, for example, issuing the arrest warrant against Vladimir Putin, forgetting that Russia is not a member of ICC. So there is no legal basis for ICC to persecute Vladimir Putin. So I am a strong advocate for changing international order. India, your country, you are now number one in population. Where is your voice globally? For me, it is very important that Western countries, they call India as a balancer. For me, you are not anymore a balancer. Plus, I don't think you will be happy to keep only this balancer role in the world. Also, your navy is second largest in Asia after Chinese, right? So all of that, plus even in Poland, my country, there are many people highly educated, occupying different professions, also labors here. So definitely, there must be a shift in international law. We cannot go further with that. Also, international law still is a law between nations, between states. But how about non-state actors, private companies? How private companies as social media actors influence elections? That must have changed. We live in some kind of 19th century reality. But again, technology, transportation, it's going on.
Yeah, so what are some of the major changes or some of the shifts that you are wishing to see or you are proposing in order to have a better global world order?
First of all, we must speak openly about our needs and our obstacles. I've been witnessing that on every conference, every symposium, or even course I teach for different military institutions, that countries, they prefer to say that, yeah, we think alike, yeah, we are united. No, we are not. We have naturally different needs, different interests, and different allies. For example, Turkey in NATO is some kind of, the bad guy because some countries, they accuse Turkey of cooperating with Russia. But I always say we need them because of their geostrategic position. If they are not with us, they would be against us. The same with India. Either we accept India despite some difficulties and some differences, or India would find other partners, other, peer in economy, in politics. So this is in our interest to understand the different rationale, the different mentality of each country. That's why I've been to Russia. I studied Russian. Now, even before our interview, I had Chinese lessons to understand that people, they do differ, and it's not wrong about that. But this is our mistake, that we always use our lens. We think that if we do that way, if we think that way, every other does the same, every entity. And this is very wrong. We have been observing that, as you mentioned, war in Ukraine, in Israel, in African conflict, and maybe in future in Taiwan.
Yeah, so, you talked about India. So, I interview a lot of leaders and policymakers from Eastern Europe, Western Europe, as well as from the United States. So, a lot of these policymakers have this thing that, India is not acting according to what they wish, how India to act, right? So, what according to you has been wrong with India's stance in the Ukraine war? And do you think that the Western nations as well as the European countries should understand India for India's approach, or in they need to be more critical about India and completely leave India and form an alliance with a different country. Like in recent days, we have seen the whispers of a different alliance like Squad instead of Quad. So how do you see this?
Yes, first of all, I always try to understand instead of judging. And by India saying this is not our war in Ukraine, you are true. This is not your war. Russia is not your natural enemy. China is. So we must understand those differences, but also to say openly what we expect. Because I get this impression that we Westerners, we really get offended. How dare you acting against our will? But have you said exactly what is your will? Why war or winning war in Ukraine against Russia is important, is beneficial? If we would change this rhetoric, and India has colonial past. So I'm not surprised that you would be not nagging whatever what people are saying. This is very crucial. I've been seeing that all over, and I've been working in every continent. We must stop, we as a Westerners, and expecting everyone else thinking the same way. You're building your own democracy. Yes, it's still new. Yes, we see that there are some problems. And also, I think that it's important to address it openly. But again, it's a process. War in Afghanistan, 12 years. No, it cannot change the culture. How can you possibly use military force to change the culture? Culture is being shifted from generations, not like in 1 or 2 generations. That would be very fragile. And every conflict or like Arab Spring, show that people, they don't understand. When in Europe, what we accomplished, democracy, it comes from ancient years, like Greece. So how can we expect that some other countries all around the world, they will go through that very hard and difficult social agreement in just 1 generation? So India is doing their way. You are investing in your economy. But again, I think it's important to talk as partners, as mentors, not
Yeah, and one more thing around India, I would like to ask that what would be your suggestions as a legal advisor and as an international lawyer to Indian political leadership, as well as the Indian Ministry of External Affairs, in order to, related to Indo-Pacific region and related to the wars that is going around in the world, be it in Eastern Europe or be it in Middle East. So how would you, approach this if you would have been an Indian?
Well, definitely, I don't follow your internal politics. I will only speak from the external perspective that, yes, you dislike Chinese Communist Party policies, but still you depend on economy. That is your largest trade partner still. So in a sense that it's very important to say we buy or we export what we need. We say no to your values, because values, this is what brings you to Western world. So to NATO, to European Union, to United States, but also to Asian partners of NATO. This is very important. So Republic of Korea, Japan, but also down south of Australia and New Zealand. So I think India, instead of focusing on the past of being the global south, you could be equal partner among those most developed countries. So Westerners, yes, keeping your own tradition, keeping your own culture, but because of the values which are important for you, I think you would get more like equal understanding of your country. Because again, if you will surround yourself with developing countries like South Africa or South American countries, then it's a bit tricky, right? So I understand that you are still at this process of balancing between North and South, the democratic Westerners or Eastern Asian countries. But again, you are growing. This is I am delighted to see that. And again, for us, the Western world, we need you to fight China. I mean, not only militarily, but also economically, politically.
Yeah, now coming, from government to the community, I have been very actively involved in raising voices against the autocratic regimes, be it in the United Kingdom or be it here in India. So I want to ask that what can international community in general do in order to build a community of people, be it policymakers, journalists, and think tank leaders, someone like you, legal advisors, and can have a very strong opinion against the autocratic regimes around the globe?
First of all, speak up what you are doing. And of course, I've been following you. Warm congratulations, because people must hear those voices. People prefer to live in a bubble where everything is cute, cozy, fluffy, and pink. It is not. And I can tell you in my work, I speak up. My voice is not always sweet. I would say most often I speak bitter truth. But people are like, oh, really? Is it that way? Really? Are Chinese that bad? Yes, they are. Communism is bad. Communism is not cute sharing and everyone is happy. It's stealing, raping, killing political opponents, minorities. And we've seen that. I was born in free Poland, but previous generations, they were living under regime of Soviet Union. So now Chinese Communist Party, yes, it's modern version of communism, but still this is deadly system. This is very important to talk, to speak up, as you are doing as a journalist, people, teachers, academic professors. We should not use cute, sophisticated words that, we should cooperate, we should do this, because this is not go for us. We are not fighting only for our generation, but also our children, grandchildren, to grow up in free world. And by free world, I mean the freedom of choice, of freedom of your religion, philosophy, where you want to work, where you want to live, who you want to marry, if you want to marry. This is very important. And in Chinese regime, in Russian state, in North Korea, Iran, Syria, Venezuela, people, they don't have choice. There is criminality, there is obligation to work with the government, with the party. And if you don't, you will be punished severely. So, yes, democracy, Western world, we also, capitalism, all of that has, bad sides, problems, issues. But again, you feel safe. You are free to choose. In communism, there is no option of choice.
Yeah, so I would like to conclude the discussion by asking that where do you see this world going, especially keeping in mind the conflicts that are going around in this world? Where do you see this world going, and what suggestions do you have for multilateral organizations in order to promote a better global stability?
I would be advocating for changing international legal framework. So United Nations would be finally executive organ. Not only wishful thinking, let's save the world, peace and all of that, because it's not effective. It's anyhow. Threats to our democracies, they don't sleep. They come up with new solutions, new methods, national law. We don't have executive power like, the world government or world police. There is no obligatory judiciary. So I would suggest we must change that. Otherwise, war criminals, they would never be punished. Just to remind you, in the history of international law, there was zero head of state who's been prosecuted for war crimes. So it shows the weakness of international law. And again, the criminals, the states, non-state actors, they would move forward. Also with seabed mining at the bottom of Pacific Ocean. Once technology will be that efficient, dig in to get those minerals, raw minerals. There might be the war, the third world war for resources. And I'm pretty sure we are going that direction unless we will secure international mechanisms to execute to basically act like a state, like national level. We are missing that element at international level. So I hope we will do that before it's too late.
Thank you very much once again for your time, and thank you for raising this important issue, and thank you for pointing out all the things that is needed in order to promote for a better global stability. It was indeed a pleasure hosting you on the Prode.